Oh, hi. This is a pre-recorded 15-minute briefing that's been brought to you by Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland Safeguarding Adult Boards. Safeguarding Adults Week is a time for organisations to come together to raise awareness of important safeguarding issues. We believe that working in partnership allows us to share our knowledge of safeguarding, learn from others and ultimately create safe cultures. During Safeguarding Adults 2025, we will be working with our partners to explore a different safeguarding theme each day. This session is going to focus on domestic abuse in older adults. My name's Jo Dyke and I'm the Principal Social Worker at Leicester City Council, and I'm going to introduce you to my colleague.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Clegg and I'm Head of Information at Age UK, Leicestershire and Rutland.
Domestic abuse does not stop at 50, 60, 70 or 80 years old. Domestic abuse in later life has often been a hidden issue with hidden victims. It can be extremely difficult for many older adults to speak out about it, and the impact of any form of abuse can be profound and long-lasting. Older adults are often overlooked in discussions about domestic abuse, but domestic abuse can happen at any age. The total figure for how many older adults have been domestic abuse was only started to be collected in October 2021 for anybody over age 75 and over. We also know that older adults may face barriers to reporting abuse, and there are likely to be more cases of domestic abuse that have not been officially recorded. With an ageing population, the situation is only going to get worse. So key numbers. Hourglass estimate that 2.7 million older adults across the United Kingdom are affected by the physical, emotional, economic, sexual abuse and or neglect. 1 in 6 older adults are victims of abuse, which is 16% of all our mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, grandparents, friends and neighbours. 44% of victims aged 61 plus experience abuse from an adult family member compared to just 6% of those under 60. 40% experience abuse from a current intimate partner compared to 28% of those under 60. 48% of victims aged 61 plus have a disability and 34% have a physical one. So who are the older victims of domestic abuse? Among older victims, 3 in 10 are male, and abusers include adult children and other family members as well as partners. The data on domestic homicides tells us that older women are most likely at risk from their partners or former partners, whilst older men are most at risk from their adult family members, such as grandchildren or adult children. Domestic Abuse Act 2021 and its accompanying statutory guidance recognises the need for support services to avoid making assumptions about a victim's condition or health based on their age. For instance, injuries or mental health issues may be viewed as a result of the victim's health and social care needs without inquiries being made around domestic abuse. It is recognised that when an adult child or a grandchild is causing an older adult harm, the older adult may not want the relationship to end, so reaching out for support can be an additional challenge. So older people and domestic abuse, some key facts. Domestic abuse may be physical, sexual, emotional, financial, and it may be a one-off event or part of a pattern. Like younger adults, older adults may experience one or more types of abuse, but age-related factors mean there are also some key differences. Older people are just as likely to be abused by an adult child as they are by an intimate partner. On average, older people experience abuse for twice as long before seeking help as those under 61. Research by Durham University found that older adults with bad or very bad health are 3 times more likely to experience partner or family abuse compared to people with good health. And single older adults had 2.5 times higher risk of family abuse than those who were in relationships. Older adults who are unemployed or economically inactive are 2.5 times more likely to be victims. A recent analysis of homicide cases in the UK shows that 25% of these cases were of people over 60. Almost half of older adults experiencing domestic abuse will have a disability or mobility issue. An older adult may find it difficult to report abuse or leave a relationship where their abuser is also their carer. Men are at increased risk of domestic abuse as they age and the range of potential perpetrators widens. There is a misconception that older adults take abuse takes place in residential care, but in fact most abuse occurs in the individual's own home, most often perpetrated by intimate partners and other family members, the very people they trust and rely on. Risk factors can include intergenerational transmission of abuse, stress, dependency, isolation, and communication difficulties. I'm now going to hand over to Cheryl.
Abuse is any action that violates a person's human or civil rights, and it can take many forms. The national organisation Hourglass, which was previously known as Action on Elder Abuse, defines the abuse of older adults as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate behaviour occurring within a relationship where there is an expectation of trust, which causes harm or distress to the older adult. Domestic abuse does not always include involving violence. Types of abuse can include financial abuse, and this is where someone in a position of trust interferes in the older adult's ability to acquire, use, or maintain their finances. For example, an abuser may exploit an older adult by making demands for large transfers of money or assets. They may control an older adult's access to financial resources by refusing them to let them have access to a bank account, or limit their ability to maintain financial security by building up a debt in their name. A common sign of financial or economic abuse is the deliberate isolation of an older adult from family and friends, resulting in the caregiver alone having total control. Quite often, the perpetrator will use emotional guilt and bullying to obtain money to pay off their own debts or fund addictions. Sexual abuse involves any non-consensual sexual activity or activity perpetrated against an older adult, and such acts can include rape or attempted rape, sexual assault, involving an older person in making or viewing sexual imagery against their wishes, indecent exposure, inappropriate sexual harassment, and sexual teasing or innuendo. Psychological abuse and coercive control involves emotional abuse with the threats of harm, bullying, and harassment, and other behaviours or acts of coercive control, which deliberately try to scare, humiliate, isolate, or ignore an older adult. Such abuse can also relate to acts which may contravene the human rights of older adults, such as the restriction or prevention of them meeting their religious or cultural needs. Physical abuse is any intentional or behaviour causing injury, trauma, or other physical suffering or bodily harm. And this includes instances of fabricated or induced illness, or causing the older adult to become unwell. Neglect or self-neglect occurs when a person deliberately withholds or fails to provide suitable and adequate care and support that's needed by the older adult. It may be through a lack of knowledge or awareness, or through deliberate decision not to act when they know the older adult in their care needs their support. Neglect can negatively impact on the health and well-being of the older adult. So what are the barriers to gaining support? Older adults experiencing domestic abuse may face several barriers to seeking and receiving support, including not recognising that they are being abused, fear, long-term health conditions, and not knowing where to go for help. Domestic abuse in later life has often been a hidden issue, and it still is, and there are hidden victims all around us. Older adults are often overlooked in discussions about domestic abuse, but it can happen at any age. Older adults are as diverse in their lives and experiences as younger people, and it does not discriminate, and anyone can be affected. Stereotypes can be a barrier to older adults recognising themselves as victims, but also to professionals recognising the possibility of domestic abuse being present. Loss of memory and strokes may be perceived as age-related, but could actually be the result of head injury or non-fatal strangulation. We know that many older victims of domestic abuse do not recognise themselves as such, so any statistics may be underestimates. And it's common for victim survivors of domestic abuse to feel a sense of shame and self-blame that can be exacerbated as we age. The trauma of decades of control and abuse can erode self-esteem, making it hard to feel visible and make sense of what's happening. It can also be extremely difficult for many older adults to speak out about it, and the impact of any form of abuse can be very profound and long-lasting. In many cases, an older adult may be too scared to access support. They may wish to protect family members, or it may have been normalised abuse that's been going on for a long time. For example, if somebody perhaps has been married for 50 years and the abuse has been going throughout that time, it's very, very difficult for somebody to break free from that, or to admit that perhaps what's going on around them isn't what we class as normal behaviour. Older victims may experience a decline in physical and cognitive health and become dependent on the perpetrator's support. In some cases, the individual may be providing a caring role for the abuser, which also impacts on the situation. Older women often feel expected to protect the family unit by staying with the abuser and may fear losing relationships with adult children and friends. Frontline workers may lack the awareness about the relationship between domestic abuse and older individuals, which means that opportunities may be missed to identify those who are at risk and ask the necessary questions. When it becomes clear that abuse has taken place, older individuals may not receive access to specialist domestic abuse support or resources because abuse experienced by older adults is sometimes recorded as elder abuse and not domestic abuse. This is usually due to a lack of understanding about the prevalence and nature of domestic abuse amongst older adults, and that can have a real impact on the support that's available to victims. Media and political campaigns against domestic abuse can also predominantly focus on younger women and children, which can inadvertently contribute to barriers for older people reporting abuse. There's also a lack of data and evidence about older people's experience of domestic abuse, and this sometimes means that policies and resources rarely consider the specific needs of older victims. So what more can be done? The stereotype of a typical victim survivor as a younger woman means that opportunities to identify and respond to older people experiencing domestic abuse are often missed. We need to raise awareness amongst health and social care professionals working with older individuals and ensure that they feel confident in spotting the signs of domestic abuse in those they work with. They should be supported to take opportunities to ask about possible domestic abuse, hospital discharge, care assessment, or GP appointments, and direct older adults to appropriate support where it is wanted and needed. Better data about older people and domestic abuse needs to be collected. The new ONS data is a step in the right direction, but we need to make sure that data collected locally accurately records domestic abuse amongst older adults where it's occurred. More resources need to be made available to meet the needs of older victims, and the public need to be made more aware that it is going on in the communities, in villages, neighbourhoods, in rural areas, so that they can look out for the signs. And we all need to watch out for the warning signs of domestic abuse, such as bruising, excuses for injuries, perhaps being rather isolated, keeping away from people, changes in their daily habits, because in a lot of cases, they will be an indicator that some form of domestic abuse is occurring. We're now going to show you a video, and as you will see, some people may find the contents of the video distressing because it does contain themes of coercive control domestic abuse and gaslighting. Please look at the list of organisations that can offer support, and please contact them if you would need further support yourself or you would like further information. Thank you very much for listening to us today.